My wife yelled as I lay motionless on the ground. You're pathetic. Stop being a baby. My brother-in-law smirked while his mother accused me of ruining her birthday, but when the paramedics arrived, they all panicked. My name is Darren, and I am 38 years old. I'm an electrician. I had a good business, residential and commercial work, 2 apprentices, and steady contracts with 3 construction companies. Things were good, which meant I had to be available, even when someone called at 2 in the morning about a shorting panel. So, when I arrived at the Ashford family's pool party, I came straight from rewiring a downtown restaurant. I was still in my dusty cargo pants, the wire strippers clipped to my belt, my work boots scuffing the expensive Italian tile of my mother-in-law Vivian's pool deck. I felt about as comfortable as showing up to a yacht club in a beat-up pickup truck. The Ashford crowd looked like they'd walked out of a glossy magazine. Expensive sunglasses, designer everything, that casual, effortless look that costs thousands of dollars. Across the vast yard, Roxy, my wife, stood with her brother Zane and her mother Vivian, the birthday girl. Vivian was doing her Queen of Suburban Connecticut thing, despite being 72 years old. I had learned quickly after marrying Roxy that you showed up when summoned. It did not matter if I had permits to file or a crucial panel to finish. When Vivian Ashford threw a party, I cleared my schedule. Roxy made that rule clear 3 years prior, after I missed her father's retirement party for an emergency commercial job. She did not speak to me for 2 weeks afterward. The party was in full swing. Kids cannonballed into the pool while adults worked their way through fancy gin drinks. I recognized most of the faces, the same people from every Ashford gathering. They were the ones who would smile and ask what I did, then instantly zone out the second I said, electrician. One guy, Roger, had cornered me at Christmas to explain why tradesmen needed to think bigger. Roger ran a hedge fund and could not wire a lamp if his life depended on it. My phone buzzed. It was a commercial client needing a quote for Monday. It was a massive restaurant retrofit. 20 new circuits, a complete panel upgrade, the kind of job that paid my mortgage for 2 months. I pulled it out to check the specifications, and Roxy's eyes met mine from across the deck. She walked over, that thin, fake smile plastered across her face. Seriously, Darren, can't you put the phone away for one afternoon? She took a long, annoyed sip of her drink. Work email takes 2 seconds. Everything is work with you, she continued, her voice low and sharp. You know how bad it looks when you're standing here on your phone while everyone else is talking. I put the phone away. I did not bother mentioning that her talking was 90% gossip and 1% upmanship disguised as conversation. You mean while everyone else is discussing stock portfolios and golf handicaps?
Yeah, real exciting.
Her jaw tightened. Just try to act normal for once, and for goodness sake, at least pretend you want to be here. She walked off before I could reply. Normal? I muttered to myself, because standing around making small talk with people who viewed manual labor as something beneath them was exactly how I wanted to spend my Saturday. I checked my watch, mentally calculating how much time I needed to pass before I could claim an early job tomorrow and bail without incurring Roxy's wrath. That is when I saw him coming, Zane. He walked over with that familiar, entitled swagger, like he owned every inch of the immaculate property. Darren, my man. He slapped my shoulder hard enough that I had to shift my stance. You look tense. This is a party, brother. Loosen up. Long day. Commercial job ran late. Always working. He grinned, but the coldness never left his eyes. That's your problem, Darren. You don't know how to have fun. Fun, in Zane's world, usually meant someone else getting hurt or embarrassed. I had been the entertainment at enough of these gatherings to see exactly where this was going. He was standing between me and the exit. His voice was getting louder so people would notice. A crowd was already starting to gather because Zane putting on a show was always worth watching. I'm good, man. Just gonna grab some food and... Nah, nah. You know what this party needs? He raised his voice, playing to the gathering audience now. Some real excitement. Some actual fun instead of everyone standing around being boring. I took a step back. My work boots had good traction on dry concrete, but this area was near the pool and looked slick. Zane, I'm not really feeling. Come on, Darren. Don't be like that. His hand shot out and grabbed my arm, not friendly, but rough. Let's show these people how we do it. Pool games. Like old times. Like old times. Last 4th of July, I could not stand up straight for a week after one of his games. He had tackled me into a metal patio chair and laughed while I wheezed on the ground. Roxy had handed me ice and told me to toughen up. I'm in my work clothes. I don't want to. Oh my gosh, Darren. Roxy's sharp voice cut through the air. It's my mother's birthday. Just go along with it for once. I looked at her. She had that look. The one that said I was embarrassing her just by existing, by not wanting to be her brother's punching bag for everyone's entertainment. Vivian's voice floated from her spot near the patio chairs. Zane's just trying to liven things up. You're always so serious. The crowd was watching now, waiting. I knew the calculation. Either I played along and got hurt, or I stood my ground and became the buzzkill who ruined Vivian Ashford's birthday party, and they would hold that over my head for months. Zane's grip tightened on my arm. See, even Mom wants you to lighten up. Come on, little brother. Man. Seriously. I tried again, but he was not listening. He never did. His other hand grabbed my shoulder, and suddenly he was spinning me. It was not playful. It was hard. The kind of force that said he knew exactly what he was doing. The world tilted. I felt my feet leave the ground as he used his weight. He had a good 40 pounds on me. To rotate my entire body and throw me. People were laughing. Someone yelled encouragement. I caught a glimpse of Roxy rolling her eyes as if this was all somehow my fault. Time slowed. I could see where I was headed. Those fancy concrete steps leading into the shallow end. I knew my back was going to hit first. The crack when I hit felt less like a sound and more like a core part of me just broke. And then came the laughter, loud, real laughter, because watching Darren, the electrician, get tossed around was, apparently, peak entertainment for the Ashford crowd. The first thing I registered was that I could not breathe right. The air was sticky, trapped in my lungs, and the pain radiating from my back felt like a heavy, blunt object was pressing against my spine. The pool water was warm. Vivian kept it heated year-round for her morning swims. My work shirt was soaked, sticking to my skin. One of my wire strippers, the yellow, handled pair I had used for 7 years, had come off my belt and was floating near my hand. I could see everything with a terrifying clarity. The underside of the pool deck awning, the perfectly blue Connecticut sky, the clouds moving overhead. I saw Roxy's face, her initial look of surprise shifting rapidly into annoyance. But the most terrifying realization was the profound and absolute silence below my waist. I tried to move my legs. I focused everything I had on just moving my toes. A wiggle, a flicker, anything. It was like they belonged to someone else. They were simply not there. Walk it off, Darren. Roxy's voice, not concerned, but profoundly annoyed, cut through the buzzing in my ears. You're making a scene. God, you always do this. I tried to speak, to tell her that I was not doing anything, that something was horribly, irreversibly wrong, but my lungs were not cooperating. I managed to croak out a sound that might have been words. Seriously. That was Vivian, her birthday party interrupted by her son-in-law's inability to take a joke. Zane barely touched him. He's being dramatic, like always. Zane was standing at the pool edge, still wearing that arrogant, confident grin. Come on, man. It was just a toss. Stop milking it. I wanted to scream that I was not milking anything, but I could barely draw enough air into my chest to make a whisper. Right? Because paralysis was a choice I was making to ruin her mother's party. It was the lowest form of gaslighting, and for 6 years I had swallowed it. But this time, I could not physically get up and walk away from it. This is ridiculous. Roxy's expensive heels clicked on the wet concrete as she came closer, standing directly over me. Darren, you are embarrassing me. Get up. Then everything changed. A woman I vaguely recognized from the party, Cassie Rodriguez, maybe a coworker of Vivian's husband, pushed through the gathering crowd. She was not laughing. Her face had gone dead serious, wiped clean of any social pleasantries. Nobody touch him. Her voice cut through the air, silencing the lingering snickers and background noise. Nobody move him. I mean it. Oh, come on. Zane forced a laugh, attempting to recover the moment. He's fine. Just being dramatic. Shut up. Zane. Cassie was kneeling beside me now, her hands hovering above my body, not touching. Her eyes were sharp, professional, and assessing. Can you hear me? I nodded slightly. I need you to tell me what you're feeling. Can't. I managed, the word barely audible. Legs? Her face went white, stark white. She gently pressed on my shin. Can you feel this? Nothing. She pressed on my thigh. Nothing. My ankle. Still nothing. She moved up my leg, checking reflexes, watching my face for any reaction, any involuntary flinch. Each test came back the same, zero response. Her expression grew more grim with every failed check. Can you wiggle your toes? I tried. I stared down at my soaked work boots, willing my feet to move. But it was like they belonged to someone else entirely, dead weight anchored to the concrete. Nobody move him. Cassie repeated, now pulling out her phone. Something in her voice, that professional, commanding tone, finally made even Vivian shut up. This is a spinal injury. This could be really bad. You're overreacting. Roxy argued, though the edge of her voice had softened into a shaky uncertainty. He probably just needs a minute too. Mom, I'm a paramedic, Cassie stated flatly. This man has no sensation or movement in his lower body. That is not needing a minute. That's a medical emergency. The laughter had stopped entirely. The party had gone quiet, leaving only the sound of my ragged breathing and Cassie's urgent voice. I was still lying there, half in the pool, unable to move. Cassie was on the phone now. I need an ambulance at 840 7 Woodbridge Lane. Adult male, possible spinal cord injury following blunt force trauma. Priority 1. I watched Roxy. She was pacing, her face running through a rapid cycle of shock, fear, and calculation. I could see her trying to figure out how to spin this so it was not her brother's fault. This is insane, Vivian said, sounding less certain now. Zane didn't mean for this to happen. It was an accident. Accident implies nobody was at fault. Cassie said, without looking away from me. Your son grabbed him and threw him into concrete steps. That's assault. The word, assault, landed on the silent patio like a physical blow. Zane's face went pale. Roxy stopped pacing, frozen. Vivian's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Siren started in the distance, a faint wail getting louder, approaching rapidly. Okay, Darren, Cassie said softly, looking at me. I know you're scared, but I need you to stay very, very still. Help is coming. Scared did not begin to cover it. I ran my own business. I climbed ladders every day. I crawled through attics and under houses. My entire life, my identity, and my independence depended on being physically capable. And now I was unable to feel half my body, while the woman who was supposed to be my wife had complained about the scene I was making. It was a profound betrayal that made the physical pain secondary. The only small comfort was the presence of Cassie, a complete stranger, who had instantly cared more about my well-being than my own family. Strapped to the backboard, staring at the ambulance ceiling, the numbness in my legs felt less terrifying than the certainty of what Roxy would demand next. Every bump in the road sent jolts of pain through my upper back, yet, from the waist down, I was a passenger in my own body. Cassie rode with me. I remember her calming voice, giving the hospital quick, precise updates over the radio. At the hospital, they moved me quickly. The doctor, a man who looked younger than my last apprentice, did not waste time. We need to get you into an MRI. See what we're dealing with. The MRI machine looked and sounded like something designed to mess with your head. They slid me into the narrow cylinder, and for 45 minutes, I listened to sounds like construction work, all the while trying not to think about wheelchairs. I focused on the one thing I still had control over: my breath. When they pulled me out, the doctor was waiting with another doctor. She was a woman, probably mid-50s, with silver hair and a deeply serious face. Darren, this is Dr. Kava. She's our spine specialist. Dr. Kova had a tablet with images of my back. Black and white scans that looked like abstract art to me, but clearly told her everything she needed to know. You have a fresh fracture at L2, she began, pointing to a spot on the screen. That's what's causing your current symptoms. That's the immediate trauma from today. I waited, bracing myself for the prognosis, for the definitive, life-altering statement. But we also found 3 older fractures: L4, T9, and T11. She looked directly at me. These are old injuries, Darren. Months to years old, they show clear signs of repeated blunt force trauma. The room spun, despite the fact that I was already lying flat. What? That's impossible. It's not. Dr. Kova countered, her voice quiet but firm. These fractures happened at different times. They're in different stages of healing. This suggests a pattern of injury over a period of time. Pattern. The word echoed in the quiet hospital room. I thought back. The 4th of July incident on the trampoline where I landed wrong and had cracked a rib that they said was just bruising. Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when Zane, accidentally, bumped me from behind on the stairs, and I could not sit right for 2 weeks. The football game where he tackled me into a tree. The pool party where he held me under until I saw spots. Every single time, it was just family fun. Just Zane being Zane. My spine had kept better records than I ever did. Your spine is telling us a story, Mr. Keller, Dr. Kava said quietly. That's when Detective Annika showed up. She was mid-40s, sharp, and wore a simple, unrateable expression. Mr. Keller, I'm Detective Annika. Heck of a day you've had. That's one way to put it. She pulled out her phone. One of the guests recorded what happened. Standard party video. Want to see it? I nodded, even though my stomach twisted with dread. The video was brutal. Me backing up, saying, No. Zane grabbing my arm, his voice loud. Let's show these people some real fun. The spin, the throw, the sickening crack when I hit. And then, clear as day, the crowd's laughter and Roxy's voicey. Stop being so dramatic, Darren. You're embarrassing me. Detective Annika paused the video on the freeze frame of Zane grinning down at the pool. This is assault. She made careful notes on her pad. The doctor showed me your MRI. Those old fractures paint a picture of domestic abuse over time. You want to tell me about them? Telling the truth was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I told her all of it. Every incident. Every injury. Every time I had been told I was overreacting or being too sensitive or that I just could not take a joke. Every injury that was casually brushed off as me being clumsy or too awkward to play along. Your wife knew about these injuries? Detective Annika asked. She was there when they happened. Always had an excuse. I explained, the words tasting like ash. That it was just how her family showed affection. That I should toughen up. The detective's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. That's called enabling, Mr. Keller. And depending on how this plays out, she might be looking at charges herself. My phone had been buzzing non-stop in the room. Roxy, Vivian, even Zane, all of them trying to get ahead of this, trying to dictate the narrative. I ignored them all. Based on the video evidence, the medical evidence, and your statement, we're arresting Zane Ashford for assault with bodily harm. Detective Anaka confirmed. Given the severity and the pattern of previous injuries, we're also pursuing aggravated assault charges. What about my wife? I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. We're building a case for spousal neglect and obstruction of medical aid, she said. She created an environment where this abuse could continue and interfered with a first responder. That has legal consequences. For the first time in 6 years of marriage, someone was telling me that the Ashford family's money, their connections, and their carefully curated reputation did not make them immune to consequences. It was a profound, almost dizzying sense of validation. The pain in my back was intense, but the certainty that I was finally doing the right thing was stronger. The internal conflict that had kept me quiet, the fear of being weak or dramatic, was shattered by 4 fractured vertebrae. I had to fight, not just for my life, but for the principle that my dignity and my body were not theirs to break. Telling the truth felt like shedding a 10-ton weight, but the consequences arrived instantly. Even strapped to the hospital bed, I knew the rules of engagement had changed. The Ashfords never lost. If they could not win through charm or wealth, they won through leverage. Zane was arrested 3 days later. Detective Annika confirmed it during her visit. It sent a shockwave through their entire social circle, a scandal that overshadowed Vivian's ruined birthday for good. I had barely processed that when the second blow landed. My phone rang. It was Riley, my business partner, one of the guys who had worked for me for 3 years before I brought him on as co-owner. His voice was strained. Darren, man, we got a problem. Ashford Construction pulled their contract. All of it. 12 jobs gone. Just sent a boilerplate email. Effective immediately. Ashford Construction was owned by Vivian's husband. Of course. How bad is it? I asked, my heart sinking. My mind was already running the figures. Losing Ashford was painful, but manageable. Bad. The other 2 companies, they're making noise too, saying they're worried about project timelines with you out. They are getting pressure, Darren. Big pressure. We are looking at losing maybe 70% of our commercial contracts. Without those, We cannot keep the apprentices on payroll. Mendes and Dwayne are already asking if they should start looking. Riley's voice cracked. He had put everything into this business, too. 3 years we had worked side by side. I called around. He continued. Everyone's getting the same message from the Ashford's people. A work with us or work with Darren Keller. Not both. This was economic warfare. Witness intimidation. The Ashford family was fighting back the only way they knew how, by threatening my livelihood and the livelihoods of 3 young men who counted on me for rent money and skill training. It was not just about breaking my back, it was about destroying my identity. Document everything, Riley, I said, my voice hardening. Every email, every phone call, every job cancellation. We are adding it to the lawsuit. Are you sure about that, man? He asked, cautious. Going after the Ashfords. They have lawyers, and they have money that could crush us. They fractured my spine in 4 places, Riley. Then they tried to ruin my business and 3 young men's lives when I pressed charges. Yes, I am sure. Riley was silent for a moment. All right, I'm with you. But Darren, the Riverside project, the general contractor is asking if we can still meet the deadline. The Riverside project was a 40-unit apartment complex, 6 weeks of work. Tell them we can, I instructed. You don't know that. You can't even sit up yet. Tell them anyway, I repeated, firm. We are not giving Ashford the satisfaction of winning by default. I will be back. Detective Annika was intensely interested in the contract cancellations when I told her. Economic retaliation, she said, nodding. That's witness intimidation. They just made this way worse for themselves in front of the district attorney. A week later, the Ashford family attorney reached out. He wanted to talk settlement. He offered to pay all my medical bills if I would simply drop the criminal charges. I told him to get bent. Meanwhile, the news of Zane's arrest and my refusal to back down hit Roxy the hardest. She showed up at the hospital around midnight, slipping past the nurse. She was not the composed, perfect wife I had married. Her makeup was smudged, and her silk dress was wrinkled. They arrested him, Darren. She hissed, her voice a low, fierce whisper. In front of the neighbors! Do you understand what you've done to this family? A broke my back, I said simply. What did you think would happen? It was an accident? You're blowing this way out of proportion because you've never fit in with my family, and this is your chance to? The MR, I found 3 other fractures. Roxy, I interrupted, the fact landing like a hammer blow. Old ones. From all the other times your brother used me as entertainment, and you told me to toughen up. That stopped her, but only for a second. She quickly pivoted back to her script. You are going to ruin everything. My mother's reputation, Zane's career, are standing in the community. For what? Because you cannot take a joke. I can't feel my legs, Roxy. I whispered, the weight of the realization crashing down on me. The doctor said I might walk again. Might. But you're probably going to be fine, she argued, already dismissing the possibility of permanent damage. And you're destroying my family over something that might not even be permanent. I stared at her. In that moment, the woman I married vanished, replaced by the selfish, ruthless Ashford clone. I realized I had been seeing what I wanted to see for 6 years, instead of what was actually there. She was not my protector. She was his enabler. She was part of the problem. Get out, I said the words quiet, final. Excuse me? Get out. I'm done. Her face went red. You cannot kick me out! I am your wife! Not for long. My lawyer's filing tomorrow. The color drained from her face, leaving her chalk white. You can't be serious. Dead serious. I'm done being your family's punching bag. She left in a storm of threats and tears, but she did not come back until she brought her own lawyer, attempting to claim the house was marital property. My attorney, bless him, shut that down in about 5 minutes. The house was purchased before marriage, never refinanced, title never changed. It was my separate property. She had no claim. For the first time, my financial independence was a weapon against them, not a weakness to be exploited. I had lost a wife, but I had gained myself respect. The paperwork was final, but the hard part was just beginning learning to exist in a body that had betrayed me. Dr. Kova performed the surgery 3 days after the arrest. She described it like she was explaining car, repairs rods, screws, fusion. Nobody could promise I would walk again, but they would give it their best shot. I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. The incision in my back felt like someone had taken a blowtorch to my spine. But the worst part was still the fear, every day staring at my useless legs, willing them to move. That is when I met Dr. Rose, my physical therapist. She was maybe 5 feet tall, but moved with an economy of motion that suggested she could bench press a bus. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, she warned me on day 1. You will want to quit. I won't let you. She was right. The first week, all we did was try to get me sitting up without passing out from the effort. My core muscles, which I had always taken for granted climbing ladders, were completely shot. I threw up twice the first day. Everything hurt. I felt weak, useless, and entirely dependent. This was the antithesis of everything I had built my life on. My capability, my physical independence. It fed directly into the internal conflict I had always struggled with, the fear of inadequacy. If I could not physically work, what was I? Meanwhile, Riley was performing miracles, keeping the business alive. We had lost nearly 70% of our commercial work, just as the Ashfords intended. We lost Riverside. Riley called one evening, his voice heavy. The general contractor called me personally, said he was sorry, but he couldn't afford to risk the project schedule with my current condition. I closed my eyes. That contract alone would have paid the payroll for 2 months. What about residential? Hustling? He said. Kitchen remodels, panel upgrades, generator installs. Small jobs, but steady. The margins are tighter, but we are covering expenses. Mendes and Dwayne are running the small crews. They are asking about their positions every week. They are good kids. Tell them to hold on. We are not giving up on them. I promised, feeling the weight of their livelihoods on my chest. Slowly, painfully, I started rebuilding. Dr. Rose was relentless. We moved from tiny, microscopic movements to trying to lift small weights, then to the parallel bars. My body was healing, but my mind was lagging, terrified of failure. Somewhere around week 6, something changed. I was in the therapy room, strapped into a harness that looked like medieval torture equipment. When Dr. Rose told me to try standing, I had tried 100 times before, resulting only in burning pain and failure. But this time, when I really focused on pushing down through my feet, I felt a flicker, a twitch, not of power, but of presence. Holy crap, I whispered. Dr. Rose grinned. There it is. That's the beginning. That's the signal getting through the scar tissue. We take that, Darren. We take that small fight. My phone rang as I was catching my breath. It was Cassie. She had been visiting regularly, not as a paramedic, but as a friend. She would stop by and talk about anything but my case or the Ashfords. She never treated me like I was fragile, and she had a dry, irreverent sense of humor that matched mine perfectly. "Hey," I answered. "Just checking in," she said easily. "Your nurse said you almost levitated today. I guess the rumors of your strength are true." I made my big toe move, I admitted, grinning despite myself. "It's a start." "It's huge," she countered, and I knew she meant it. "Listen, I am picking up some decent Vietnamese food. I can drop by the hospital courtyard in 20 minutes if you are up for company that doesn't involve bedpans or lawyers." "I am definitely up for that," I said. She showed up in her street clothes, a bright smile on her face, and 2 plastic containers of steaming food. We sat in the courtyard, the sun warm on my face. She talked about her life, the absurdities of her job, and never once judged me for the cane I was starting to use to get around the therapy room. She was simply, genuinely, nice. She was the polar opposite of the transactional, status-driven relationships I had always had with Roxy and her family. Cassie's presence was a lifeline, demonstrating that not all relationships were built on pretense or hierarchy. "You know," I said, after a comfortable silence, "you really didn't have to stick around. Most people from the party disappeared the second the sirens left." She shrugged, dipping a spring roll in sauce. "I was on the scene, Darren. I know what happened. And I know a fight when I see one. You're a provider, you don't roll over easy. Plus," she winked, "you owe me a dinner for calling your wife an enabler to her face." I laughed, a real, full-chested laugh that hurt my back but felt incredible. It was the first time I had truly laughed since hitting the concrete. I was still physically broken, still fighting for my mobility, and the threat of the Ashford family still loomed, but I was not alone anymore. That small movement in my toe, combined with the honest connection I found in the courtyard, cemented my resolve. I had a fight to win, and I would not quit now. Every physical therapy session had been a rehearsal for this, standing firm under pressure, even when you still felt weak. By the time the criminal trial began, I was using a walker, moving slowly, but moving. The pain was my constant companion, a dull throb that flared into a fierce ache, a physical reminder of what Zane had done, and what I was fighting to get back. The courtroom was a sterile, impersonal place, filled with people wearing expensive suits who had no idea what it felt like to have your entire life reduced to a single X-ray image. Zane was there, looking pale but attempting to project a bored confidence next to his lawyer. An older man in a tailor-made suit with a condescending smile. Roxy sat stone, faced in the gallery next to Vivian, their posture stiff, their faces composed in masks of injured innocence. Zane's lawyer, a man named Sterling, opened by painting Zane as a family man caught in an unfortunate accident. Harmless fun gone wrong, a brotherly wrestling match that ended badly, the usual spin. He spoke about Zane's community standing and successful career. He made no mention of the 3 previous fractures. Then the prosecution started rolling out the evidence, and the temperature in the courtroom dropped by 10 degrees. Then the prosecution started rolling out the evidence, and the temperature in the courtroom dropped by 10 degrees. The video was played on a large screen in the center of the room. The video was played on a large screen in the center of the room. The courtroom went dead silent. You could see exactly what happened, me backing away, saying no, Zane grabbing me, the vicious spin, the sickening crack when my back hit the concrete steps. Then the laughter. 2 women in the jury box looked physically sick. A man in the back row was shaking his head slowly. After the video, Dr. Kava walked the jury through the MRI images. She used a pointer to highlight the fresh fracture at L2, then meticulously outlined the other three, T9, T11, and L4. She laid it out clean and undeniable. This was not a single accident. This was systematic trauma over years. The way she used clinical terms, blunt force, repeated trauma, varying stages of calcification, made it sound far more chilling than any shouting could have been. When it was my turn to testify, I took my place in the witness stand, using the walker to steady myself. I told them about the incidents, the dismissals, the pattern of abuse. I explained that I ran an electrical business, that I climbed ladders and carried heavy panels, and that Zane had been breaking my back for years, while his family told me I was the problem for not being able to take a joke. "Why didn't you leave sooner, Mr. Keller?" Sterling asked me on cross-examination, his tone dripping with false sympathy, suggesting that if I was truly unhappy, I was responsible for my own injuries. I believed my wife when she said that was just how her family showed affection. I said, looking straight at the jury, not Roxy. I believed that my job was to tolerate the abuse to keep the peace. I believed that being tough meant never showing pain, even when my spine was breaking. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. I stopped believing it when I was told I might never walk again. I realized being tough means standing up for yourself, even against the people you married into. The prosecution then hammered the final nail into the coffin, the evidence of economic retaliation. They introduced voicemails from Vivian's husband to contractors. They showed emails spelling out their campaign to tank my business. Text messages were displayed, urging other companies to cut me loose because I couldn't work. It was clear witness intimidation, and it revealed a deep, seated conspiracy to silence me. Cassie testified next, recounting the scene at the party. How the family had been worried about embarrassment instead of getting me help. How Vivian asked if she was overreacting when she called the ambulance. She was a calm, credible witness, and her testimony countered every attempt by the defense to paint the Ashfords as victims of circumstance. Sterling, the defense lawyer, tried every angle during cross-examination. He asked about roughhousing as kids. He asked if I had exaggerated my symptoms for attention. He even tried to suggest that my desire for money was the real motivation. The prosecution objected twice when he got too aggressive. The judge sustained both objections. You could see the jury visibly turning against Sterling with every question. It was hard to argue against video evidence, multiple medical opinions, and 4 fractured vertebrae. None of his pathetic attempts at misdirection landed. The jury was dismissed to deliberate. It felt like 10 years, but it was only 4 hours. When they came back, the room was thick with tension. The clerk read the verdict. A guilty on all counts. Zane went white, collapsing against the table. Vivian looked ready to collapse herself. Roxy just stared at nothing, her mask finally broken, revealing only shock. The judge sentenced Zane to 5 years in state prison. He added a massive restitution payment for medical expenses and lost wages. Just over $300,000. My lawyer had documented every contract cancellation, every lost job, every apprentice we had to let go. The court acknowledged the full scope of their campaign to ruin me. The civil suit came next, using the exact same damning evidence. Different aim, higher stakes pain and suffering, emotional distress, systematic abuse. The jury awarded me $450,000. Vivian tried to appeal, but the judge was not interested. The Ashford family name lost its shine completely. Ashford Construction took a massive financial hit, losing major clients who did not want the association with a convicted felon, and charges of witness intimidation. Vivian's husband had to lay off workers and scale back dramatically. I had come into the courtroom afraid of being judged as weak. I left with the legal vindication that proved I was right. The emotional beat of the trial was a powerful confrontation where I fully shed my fear of vulnerability and demanded justice, and in doing so, I earned back my strength. Zane's sentencing was a verdict on the family itself. Justice was served, but the Ashfords had one last move. The civil suit, filed months earlier, proceeded quickly now that the criminal verdict was secured. It used the exact same damning evidence. My lawyers focused entirely on the pain and suffering, emotional distress, and the systematic abuse campaign the family had orchestrated. The jury awarded me $450,000, adding to the restitution Zane was already forced to pay. That money, while substantial, was only the confirmation that my years of silent suffering were quantifiable, measurable, and wrong. It was about validation, not wealth. Vivian tried to appeal both the criminal and civil judgments. Her lawyers argued procedural errors and bias. The judge was not interested. The evidence was simply too strong, and the pattern of witness intimidation had soared the court against them completely. The divorce finalized the same week. Roxy, despite the overwhelming evidence against her family, made one last attempt to claim the house and half of my business. Her lawyer argued she deserved compensation for emotional distress due to the separation. My lawyer pointed out that she had enabled the very actions that led to the distress, and the judge shut the claim down in under 5 minutes. 6 years of enabling abuse meant she had zero claim to my pre-marital house, business, or any property. She got nothing. Absolutely nothing. The consequences were far-reaching. Ashford Construction, which was the backbone of the family's social and financial power, took a massive hit. They lost major clients who did not want to be associated with a convicted felon and a public scandal involving assault and economic retaliation. Vivian's husband had to lay off workers and scale back. The Ashford name, once a symbol of prestige and untouchable wealth in suburban Connecticut, was now synonymous with abuse and disgrace. The day the divorce finalized, my brother, Drew, showed up at the hospital. He had been a quiet, steady presence throughout the trial, running errands and acting as a buffer against the press. But this time, he was here for work. Need anything? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. Yeah, I replied. Help moving Roxy's stuff out of my house. She's still got keys, and I don't trust her not to take things that aren't hers. 1. This weekend, if you're free. I'm free, he said simply. Called in a few buddies. 2. We'll have her out in 3 hours, tops. Consider it a clean sweep. That was Drew. No sentimentality, just showing up and getting the job done. Saturday morning, he arrived with 4 guys in a truck. By noon, every single thing Roxy had brought into my house was in boxes on the curb. Drew had every box documented with photos and a date of purchase. We changed the locks while we were at it. Roxy called, screaming, threatening to call the police. Drew took the phone. Call them, he told her, his voice calm and unimpressed. It's his house. Your name's not on anything. The court finalized the divorce. You have 72 hours to pick up your things before they go to the dump. Your call. She picked up the items. She sent movers with an attitude who tried to take my television. Drew, having meticulously documented all the receipts, stood his ground. That was here before she moved in, he told them, pulling out his phone. Check the Amazon order. 2019. 2 years before they got married. You want to keep going, or do you want to leave with what's actually hers? They left with their truck half full. I watched a video of Drew standing up to them that one of his buddies had taken. It was a simple, practical act, but it felt incredibly significant. Drew was not fighting for money or social standing, he was fighting for my boundaries, proving that he was fully on my side. The rift that Roxy had created between us for years was now firmly and finally closed, cemented over the boxes of designer clothes sitting on the curb. Meanwhile, physical therapy became my full-time job for 6 months. Dr. Rose was brutal, but she got results. The limp was permanent. Dr. Kova had been clear about that. But against all odds, I was walking on my own 2 feet. I went from parallel bars to a walker, and the walker to a cane. I could climb ladders again. I could crawl through attics. I could do 90% of what I used to do. Good enough to run jobs. I just had to be smarter about which ones I took personally versus which ones I sent the apprentices for. My physical recovery mirrored my emotional one. Every step, every ache, was a direct consequence of the violence and the betrayal, but it was also a sign of my complete release from the Ashford family's toxicity. The legal battle was over, the marriage was dissolved, and my boundaries were physically secured. I had regained my independence. The limp was permanent, a scar that taught me more than any textbook, but the world felt different now that I was walking on my own terms. My physical therapy had tapered off, leaving me with a new normal. I was walking, working, and living. My business was solid, thanks to the resilience of Riley and the hard work of the apprentices. Riley had kept the company alive, barely. We had lost most of the commercial contracts, but he had hustled up residential work. Kitchen remodels, panel upgrades, generator installs. The margins were tighter, but we were covering expenses. Slowly, we started rebuilding. Word got around about what happened, about the Ashfords, and about Vivian's husband trying to tank our contracts. Contractors talk, and the construction world is smaller than you would think. Companies that had dropped us started quietly reaching back out. A foreman calling me directly instead of going through official channels, then more openly once they saw the trial results and the large damages awarded. Within a year, we had more work than before. I used part of the settlement money to buy a second work truck and upgrade our tools. I paid off the mortgage on the house. I put the rest into investments that actually made sense instead of the high risk funds Roxy used to push me toward. Drew became a regular fixture. He would stop by most weekends, helping with whatever needed doing, whether it was wiring in my new garage lights or just grilling dinner. He never made a big deal about it. He just showed up, ready to work. Cassie and I had been dating for almost a year. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, just easy. Twice a week turned into 3 times. Easy conversations, shared humor, and a mutual respect for each other's commitment to competence. She did not need me to be perfect, and I did not need her to be anything other than exactly who she was. Decisive, smart, and kind. I realized that she looked at me like I was normal, which was generous considering everything that had happened. One Saturday afternoon, Cassie showed up while Drew and I were installing new LED shop lights in my garage. I was on the ladder, feeding wire through the ceiling joists, when Drew's phone buzzed. He was holding the ladder, scrolling with his free hand. "You're not going to believe this," he said, sounding instantly alert. "What?" "Roxy just posted that she's driving over here to settle this once and for all. Posted your address and everything." She's gone full unhinged. I climbed down quickly, my back protesting the sudden movement. You're kidding. He showed me the post. Sure enough, Roxy had gone completely off the rails on social media, posting about how I had ruined her life and stolen everything from her, and that she was going to confront me whether I liked it or not. 20 minutes later, Cassie arrived. She saw our faces and went immediately on alert. What happened? Roxy's on her way over, Drew explained, holding up his phone. Full breakdown mode. Cassie's jaw got tight. Did you call the police? We did not have to wait long. A car screeched into my driveway. Roxy got out, and she looked rough. Hair a mess, makeup smeared, wearing stained sweatpants and a ratty shirt. She stormed up the driveway toward us as we were setting up the grill. She stopped when she saw Cassie standing next to me. Of course, she spat. Of course, she's here. That was fast. Darren, real classy. You need to leave. Roxy, I said, stepping forward. This is my house! No, it's my house! I lived here for 6 years! I made this a home! Drew snorted. You complained about it for 6 years. Called it a blue-collar disaster. I was there. Roxy's face went crimson. Stay out of this, Drew. This is between me and my husband! Ex-husband. I corrected her. Cassie, ever the professional, had her phone out now, recording the interaction. Roxy saw it, and her voice went shrill. You're recording this? You bankrupted my family! You sent my brother to prison! You destroyed everything! Cassie stepped forward, placing herself squarely between Roxy and me. Your brother put himself in prison when he assaulted someone. Your family destroyed itself when they tried to cover it up with witness intimidation. Who asked you? Roxy shrieked. You couldn't wait to get your hands on him, could you? Probably planning this from the moment you saw him in that pool. I was trying to save his life while you were calling him dramatic. Cassie shot back, completely unfazed. Roxy's hands were shaking. You don't get it! My mother lost everything. My father's business collapsed. Zane's in prison. And for what? Because Darren couldn't take a joke. He broke my spine? I said, firmly. I told him no multiple times. That's not a joke, Roxy. You're walking! You're fine! You're better than fine! You got rich off it? You need to leave? I repeated. Right now, before we call the police? I'm not leaving! This is my house, too. It is really not, Cassie said. And you're trespassing. So, you can leave or we can have you removed. Roxy looked at all of us, at me with Cassie, at Drew clearly on my side, at the house she had lived in but never owned. And something in her finally broke. The anger drained away, replaced by a vacant misery. You're gonna regret this. All of you. You think you've won, but you haven't. My family has lawyers. We have connections. We're going to. Your family has nothing. I interrupted, cutting her off decisively. Your father's business is gone. Your mother's reputation is destroyed. Your brother is in prison for 3 more years. And you? You're standing in my driveway, making threats you can't back up, looking like you haven't showered in a week. She looked down at herself. For the first time, she seemed to register how she looked. Her hands went to her hair, then dropped. Her face crumpled for a second, and I almost felt bad. Then I remembered 6 years of being treated like I was less than human, and the pity vanished. I loved you, she said, her voice thin and defeated. I actually loved you. No, you loved having someone you felt superior to. Drew spoke up, holding his phone steady. Just so you know, this whole conversation is on video and going to the police if you don't leave in the next 30 seconds. Roxy looked at the phone, then she turned and walked back to her car. She got in, started the engine, and drove away. She did not look back. We stood there for a moment in the silence. Then Drew grinned. You recorded all of that? Heck yes, I did. This is going straight to your lawyer, and online if she keeps posting crazy stuff. Cassie shook her head. She needs help. She needs to accept that actions have consequences. I said, finally. But that's not my problem anymore. We went back to setting up the grill. I fired up the charcoal and tried not to think about how different my life looked now compared to 2 years ago. Better. It looked better. My back still ached on cold days, and the limp never went away, but I was walking, working, and living my life on my own terms with people who actually cared about me, people who recognized that my value was not tied to the cleanliness of my clothes or the size of my bank account, but to my character. I had lost the use of nerves, but I had finally learned that true strength was not about resisting pain, it was about demanding justice. I had finally found my spine,